Hello, my name's Nick Mullen, and for my term project, I focused on water pollution in Indonesia. Okay, so first, a little background information on Indonesia. Indonesia is a country located in Southeast Asia and is bordered by the Pacific Ocean. And one surprising fact about it is that it makes up nearly 10% of the world's water pollution, even though it's not that big of a country. And it competes with countries that are very large, such as India and China. And the reason why this occurs is because they don't have very good disposal techniques like these other countries, which I'm going to get into more in the next slides. So, why is this occurring? Is this occurring because Indonesia has a lot of irrigation systems along with rivers, and there's a wet season in Indonesia where all of these rivers and irrigation systems are going to overflow due to the increased amount of rain. And with this increased amount of rain and overflowing, the rivers that generally contain a lot of trash and hazardous chemicals overflow and leak into other parts of Indonesia and eventually into the ocean. Another reason why there's so much water pollution in Indonesia is because of the tourism. So many people each year come to Indonesia for the beautiful beaches, but what people don't realize is that they're leaving behind all of their trash and garbage, and this is really affecting the beaches and killing the wildlife. Another reason that there's so much water pollution in Indonesia is because of illegal well water in a city called Jakarta. And the reason why people are using these illegal wells is because the water in Indonesia is already polluted to begin with. So they really have no other choice unless they want to buy like bottled water, which is really expensive, or to look for their own wells to get it themselves. And the last reason why there's water pollution is because there's a lot of oil refineries and textile mills which use hazardous chemicals, and there's not really much government regulation, so they pollute a lot of the nearby rivers, oceans, and irrigation systems. So the consequences of this water pollution in Indonesia, um, these chemicals that are coming from the textile mills and oil refineries are going into the water, affecting the fish and the sea life there, and we eventually catch those fish and eat those fish. So the same chemicals that are affecting those fish are going to enter our bodies and affect us just as negatively as they are the sea life. And also, the fishermen, which is a very big industry in Indonesia, are being affected because so many of the fish in sea life are dying due to these hazardous chemicals in the water. And the last consequence is that tourists are less likely to visit Indonesia because there's so much trash in the water, and the water isn't clean and there's chemicals, so people don't really want to vacation there as much as they used to. So a possible solution to this, there's already been a couple efforts, such as cleanup efforts, which are mostly volunteers that go to the beaches and try to pick up the trash. And the Indonesian government is also working on a plastic bag-free legislation, which would make it so that they outlaw plastic bags in Indonesia. But this is still in like the early stages, and it's gonna have to be passed through a lot of different. There's gonna be a lot of different steps necessary for the government to actually pass this through and have it become a law. And lastly, there's a giant seawall that's being constructed in Jakarta, which is a city in Indonesia. And basically, the purpose of this giant seawall is to block the runoff from all these overflowing rivers and irrigation systems that contain the hazardous chemicals, so they don't run off into the oceans and pollute Indonesia's waters even more than they already are. And you can see down there, that's a picture of the Jakarta seawall. Another thing that I researched while focusing on Indonesia's water pollution problem is the inequality that people face. So, like I said before, the government is working on ways to limit Indonesia's water pollution problem, but the people that are most affected, which are the fishermen, usually don't have a say in the government and what is done in the government because they're made up of working class and lower class, so they don't have as a voice in the government. And it's really sad to see because the government says that they plan to clean up these beaches, but they don't really seem to focus as much on how this affects the fishermen and how it's already affected the fishermen. So the government's plan to put $1 billion towards cleaning up the beaches, which are the most popular things for tourists because they know that'll bring in the most money, but they don't really care about how this pollution is affecting the life of the average fisherman in Indonesia. And lastly, there's a lot of corruption in Indonesia, and these textile companies and oil refineries, they use and the plants aren't heavily regulated by the government, and there's a lot of dangerous chemicals that run off from these plants, and the government kind of looks the other way towards this problem because textile companies and oil refineries are bringing a lot of money in for Indonesia. So you kind of see this continuous problem that the government cares more about money and less about making sure that Indonesia's waters stay clean. And here's my works cited. Thank you.